It's one of the greatest rivalries in all of college football. Florida State versus Miami, Saturday, 3:30 inside Doak Campbell Stadium. Welcome to your Nole Insiders game preview, delivered by UPS. I'm Lane Hurt, along with Tim Lenefeld. Tim, this game was supposed to be played a couple weeks ago. Didn't quite happen thanks to Hurricane Irma. But now, we're playing this game. Do you feel the rivalry?
Yeah, I do, absolutely. Especially, I don't know, I think for a lot of people in Tallahassee, the Florida State-Miami game feels like it should be early to mid-October, right around October 7th, October 10th, that range. That's sort of when it feels right. Everybody sort of has a few warm-up games to get ready for it, and obviously Florida State's schedule at this point has been more than warm-up games, but everybody gets an idea to see what they have, and then you play the Hurricanes, and then you play the Seminoles. It just sort of is the way it's supposed to be. It can always be a season-defining game. I think it definitely will be for both Florida State and Miami when you consider what's at stake. Miami trying to snap that 7-game winning streak, already undefeated. Florida State looking to get back on track after last week's win against Wake Forest. Further on track, I should say, even their record at 2-2, and claim even bigger bragging rights over the University of Miami. A lot at stake in this game, as there always is.
I think when you look at Miami, you see a pretty good football team. Let's look at the Hurricanes, ranked number 13 in the AP poll. 3-0 on the season, 1-0 in the ACC. Ranked 11th in total offense, 515 yards per game. Tied for 63rd in total defense, 376 yards per game. I think that's skewed by from the Toledo game where they came off of that 2-week break. Toledo scored a bunch of points, especially in the first half. And then Malik Rozier, he leads the ACC in pass efficiency at 167, 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 65.5% completion percentage. What sticks out to you most when you look at this Mark Richt-led Miami team?
They seem to have weapons, especially on offense. I think the Malik Rozier kid's off to a nice start. Mark Walton is one of the better running backs in the ACC, if not the best in the ACC. And then look at that defensive line. We sort of laugh and roll your eyes and then maybe even cry a little bit about some of the defensive lines that Florida State has had to go up against to start this season between Alabama, NC State, Wake Forest. I think is better than people thought and better than maybe they got credit for. And Miami, they're the same way. They have NFL talent up front. It's going to be another day where Florida State's going to be facing one of the better defensive lines in the country. So no rest for the weary in that regard. Another big day for FSU up front and trying to block those guys and get the ball moving on offense.
Yeah, I think when you look at Miami, their front seven, very good. Secondary might have been what was supposed to be one of the weak points, if any, on the Miami defense. You watch that Duke game. They played a lot of man-to-man. Their corners got very physical. Florida State's going to have to win some one-on-one matchups there, you'd think.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it'll be interesting to see how Jimbo Fisher uses his receivers, specifically Auden Tate, who at this point I think you would have to say is the offensive MVP for Florida State. Scored 3 of the team's 4 touchdowns. Made just an outstanding play at Wake Forest last week to get that victory. If Miami is able to match up with him one-on-one and win its share of those battles, that's good news for the Hurricanes. However, if like we, I think, expect, Auden Tate is able to use his big body, big frame, kind of go up and get balls even when he is covered. I think that's what has made him so good this season, is even when there's not a lot of separation, he still is able to make a play, and that's good news for Florida State. And then, of course, and we've been saying this for a while, you need to get some other guys involved. Nyquan Murray, George Campbell, even Ryan Izzo, getting some other options going in the passing game so the pressure isn't all on Tate and isn't all on James Blackman to find one guy would certainly be a good thing. Now would be a good time to start that.
Our key matchup, we look at Mark Walton, Miami's running back, only 1,000-yard rusher returning from last season in the ACC versus Florida State's defensive line. Miami, this is Rozier's going to be his first big game, big atmosphere. You know they're going to want to get Walton going in this game. Florida State's defensive line, I think this is one of those challenges. They love the pro-style offenses, go against that. I think Noddy and crew are going to look to have a big impact there.
I think so too, and you're absolutely right when you talk about Mark Walton, and I think the same holds true for Florida State in that in the recent history of this series, the last 7 years or so, you win the rushing battle, you tend to win the game. That's held true just about every year over the last few years, maybe every year. And you think about Florida State and some of the running backs they've had, Devontae Freeman, James Wilder, Dalvin Cook, of course. This series has been won on the ground game. Miami's trying to swing that pendulum back in their favor. Mark Walton If he's not the best running back in this game, he's certainly the most established and the most proficient up to this point. And so, yeah, if you're Florida State, you have to try to stop that. Derek Nottie and DeMarcus Crisp, like you said, are going to have a big role in that. But I'm also looking at those linebackers. Matthew Thomas, a Miami native, Roderick Hoskins, a fellow senior in there, and Jacob Pugh. All those guys are going to have a big game, in my opinion, to slow down that Miami offense, because I think we said the Miami defense is so good. I kind of have a feeling that points are going to be at a premium on Saturday.
And then finally, kind of the X factor in this one. You talk to guys. I mean, this one's personal. So many of these guys played with each other, with or against. There's a lot of bragging rights. Fred Jones says, you know, they go home on breaks, work out, and you know, it's a chance to talk trash if you won this game. That means a lot to these guys.
It really does. And look, especially for high-profile blue-chip recruits coming out of the South Florida area, and there's always a lot of them, there can be a lot of pressure to stay home, to go to Miami. Certainly back in the 80s when Miami was in their heyday, those teams were built on South Florida talent, which I think was a point of pride for them. Well, now you have guys, and it's been this way at Florida State for quite some time, who they want to leave, they want to go somewhere else, they want to go to FSU. And what's the best way to validate that decision? Winning the game, because nobody can say anything to you when you win the game. Say, yeah, look at Dalvin Cook. You know, won 3 straight games against Miami. Nobody's telling him he shouldn't have gone to Florida State, because he clearly made the right decision. It's the same type of thing. You don't want to be like Fred Jones said. You don't want to be going home and seeing all the Hurricane fans, some of whom are probably in your own family or your friend group, saying, see, should have stayed. Miami beat you. It means something to these guys. It's maybe a different type of rivalry in all of college football. I know Florida State has a big rivalry with the University of Florida too, and that one's can be intense and mean and whatever else, but it's just a different feeling. I'm not saying one's better or worse than the other, but it's a different type of feeling to it.
You're 100%. This one does feel a little bit different for whatever the reasons.
Yeah. And when you think about some of the history in this series and some of the classic games that Florida State played, some of the Miami wins from several years ago that were some of the greatest college football games ever played, maybe Florida State didn't come out on top of them. And then think back to recent years, some really close games, some nail-biter games, even just last year with the block at the Rock and all those memorable moments. I remember thinking of Carlos Williams' touchdown in 2014, the ball was tipped in the air and he scoops it out. It always seems like this game is defined by big plays and big moments, and you just tell that it means something. You see it on guys' face in the locker rooms, the way they exhale, the way they smile. I know we're getting kind of long-winded here, but talking to Rashad Green as a senior after that 2014 game, he just sort of leaned back in his chair and smiled and said, "I never lost to the U," because I'm going to tell my grandkids about that. So exactly right. This one just sort of has, I think, a meaning for people beyond just a usual football game.
There you have it, Seminole fans. Like I said before, it's one of the greatest rivalries in all of college football. Set to kick off on Saturday, 3:30 inside a sold-out Doak Campbell Stadium. Make sure you're in there early. Support your Noles. We'll have everything you need leading up to that game. Tim has his 1st and 10, a must-read to get you ready for that game. And, of course, much, much more. 3 keys on Saturday to victory as well. So for Tim, I'm Lane. This has been your Game Day Preview, delivered by UPS. Go Noles.